When a woman decides to walk alone, she's not losing herself. She's finally meeting herself. Carl Jung. Have you ever stopped to wonder why some women choose to live alone? No boyfriend, no partner, not even the faintest sign they're searching for one. It's not because they're heartbroken, out of options, or afraid of love. The truth is deeper, more uncomfortable. Something that quietly challenges everything we've been taught about what a woman should want. Because when a woman decides to walk alone, she's not losing herself. She's finally meeting herself. And that journey doesn't come with applause, likes, or admiration. It comes wrapped in silence, in strength, in a kind of freedom that still makes many people uneasy. She isn't lonely. She's intentional. She's not cold. She's just tired of setting herself on fire to keep others warm. There's something undeniably powerful, and yes, unsettling, about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole. Because her independence breaks a system built on dependency. It disrupts control. It dismantles illusions. And it reveals an uncomfortable truth. Most men don't know how to relate to a woman who doesn't need to be rescued. And many women are still learning how to recognize themselves in the quiet mirror of that kind of strength. Carl Jung once said that what we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow. And these women? They are the shadow society has tried to suppress. Living, breathing proof of what's possible when we stop chasing validation and start embracing our wholeness. They don't demand attention. They move with intention. They don't perform to be noticed. They retreat inward, not to hide, but to preserve what they've built within. They're not looking for princes. They're protecting their peace. And that makes people deeply uncomfortable. Because while the world screams, "Hurry up, find someone," she whispers back, "I've found myself." A woman who chooses solitude isn't disconnected. She's tuned into a frequency most people can't hear. She no longer begs for crumbs. She chooses what nourishes her. She doesn't chase validation. Her presence is her power. Maybe that's why she stirs up so much judgment. Why people rush to label her as cold, bitter, or broken. But what they don't realize is this: behind what looks like absence is presence, a presence that expands, that grounds, that quietly challenges everything we think we know about love, connection, and womanhood. She doesn't want just any kind of love. She wants the kind that allows her to stay whole, never smaller. And until that comes along, she'll continue to choose herself. Maybe this all sounds like too much. Maybe it feels like pride or emotional armor in disguise. But deep down, if you're honest, there's a quiet voice that wonders, what if this still quiet path is the only one that leads to the kind of love we're all searching for? The one that begins with you. The silence that surrounds a woman who lives alone isn't emptiness. It's sacred space. To those who don't understand, it might look like distance, like arrogance, like detachment. But the truth is, she didn't build those walls to block others out. She built them to keep herself from fading inside a world that never learned how to hold her. Carl Jung also said that what we refuse to face in ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. Maybe that's why solitude still gets confused with sadness. Because most people are more familiar with distraction than with depth, while others fill their time with noise and novelty. This woman turned inward. She sat with the silence. She faced the echoes of her past, abandonment, childhood wounds, love that looked like care but felt like control. She didn't run from those shadows. She stayed. And she listened. Her decision to be alone didn't come from a fresh wound. It came from a scar that finally stopped bleeding. She hasn't stopped believing in love. She's just no longer willing to accept what other people call love when it leaves her feeling small. She's loved deeply. She's overgiven. She's begged for scraps of attention and called it connection. But one day, the ache gave way to clarity. And that clarity didn't shout. It whispered, "What you see now isn't bitterness. It's wisdom. It's emotional maturity. And maturity is scary because it doesn't bend. It doesn't perform. It doesn't chase. She no longer craves company. She craves alignment. She's not drawn to empty promises. She's drawn to presence. She isn't interested in fixing or being fixed. She wants to be seen, really seen. That takes courage. To meet someone soul to soul, not ego to ego. And most people aren't ready for that. So yes, she might seem distant, unreachable even, but it's not because she's closed off. It's because she's whole. And when a woman becomes whole, she triggers something in everyone around her. Some feel awe, others feel fear. Because wholeness is a mirror. And not everyone likes what they see reflected. She's not trying to complete anyone. She wants to overflow alongside someone who's also full. Until then, she walks alone, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. She's not hiding, she's preserving. And there's a difference, a big one. But a world that still defines women by their relationship status doesn't quite know what to do with someone like her. A world that teaches girls that love is something to earn, that partnership equals worth, that being single means you've failed. Carl Jung once said, "Where convention rules, there's no room for authenticity." And she doesn't follow convention. She follows truth. She hears things like, "You're too picky. Don't be so guarded. No one's perfect." And she smiles. Not with sarcasm, but with knowing. Because what people call picky, she calls standards. The bare minimum. The foundation she fought hard to build. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for presence, for someone who's done the inner work. The work she's already done herself. And let's be honest. That's not something you find on every corner. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says. It's in what she represents. She's proof that it's possible to live a full life without needing anyone to complete it. And that tears masks off. It unsettles men who rely on being needed. It challenges women still trapped in the need for approval. But she's not here to challenge anyone. She's just being. And that, just being, is radical. In a world built on performance, her authenticity is a quiet rebellion. She doesn't chase timelines. She doesn't rush emotions. She doesn't compromise her truth for comfort. She honors her own pace. And in a society that glorifies urgency, that kind of slowness feels revolutionary. She wants connection that reaches the soul, not conversation that fills silence. She says no without guilt. She walks away without explanation. She stays home not out of fear, but out of clarity. That clarity, earned through heartbreak, solitude, and healing, is her greatest revolution. She doesn't live to please. She lives to be. And maybe that's what makes her so dangerous. Because in a world that profits off insecurity, a woman who knows her worth is a threat. And what unsettles people the most isn't that she's alone. It's that she's at peace with it. She didn't find herself in a crowd. She found herself in solitude. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." And that's exactly what she did. Her journey wasn't some neat spiritual retreat filled with journaling and herbal tea. It was raw. It was uncomfortable. It was exhausting. She had to shed the roles she played, confront expectations, and carry emotional weight that was never truly hers. It was a slow unraveling of the stories she once told herself just to feel accepted. And with each mask she removed, she got closer to the truth of who she really was. She no longer lets others define her worth. She's not measured by who loves her, approves of her, or stays by her side. She's learned to see herself through her own eyes, and that changed everything. Maybe you've asked yourself the same question she once did. Is being alone a failure, or is it a kind of freedom? She used to think that being alone meant something was missing, that her singleness was a sign of being unlovable, that love was the prize, and a partner was the proof she deserved it. But one day, everything shifted. She realized she'd rather be alone than feel unseen in a relationship. She'd rather be whole by herself than fragmented with someone else. And in that moment, she made a quiet promise to herself. Never again would I shrink to fit inside someone else's life. Never again would I settle for less than what I deeply deserve. Her path hasn't been perfect. There have been moments of aching nostalgia, sleepless nights, and quiet doubts. But with every step rooted in awareness, she has grown stronger, not colder. Stronger. She's learned that love, the real kind, doesn't suffocate or demand self-erasure. It doesn't consume, it expands. It supports, it allows. And until that kind of love appears, she'll keep walking on her own, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. She isn't bitter. She's awake. She isn't cold. She's cautious. This woman now lives what Jung called individuation. She faced her patterns. She explored her shadows. She descended into the depths of her own unconscious and came back whole. She no longer looks for someone to complete her. She's already complete. Yes, she wants love, but not a rescuer, a partner. Not a savior, a companion. That kind of connection requires emotional maturity, and that can be hard to find. Because most people still love out of fear, not freedom. Out of insecurity, not presence. So if she walks alone, it's not because she's given up on love. It's because she knows what's worth waiting for. Every no, she says, is a declaration of self-worth. Every boundary she draws is an act of healing. She doesn't need to prove herself anymore. She's not auditioning for love. The grounded certainty she's cultivated radiates from within. Because when a woman finally reclaims herself, she becomes powerful. Not in the way the world fears, but in the way that can't be manipulated. She is no longer the woman who begged to be noticed. That version of her no longer exists. Something in her cracked. And that break became her freedom. Jung once said, "The tree that reaches to heaven must have roots that reach down to hell." And that's exactly what she's done. She faced her inner hell. The generational wounds, the trauma that didn't start with her, but almost ended with her. She stopped accepting crumbs and pretending they were meals. She walked away from recycled stories that left her empty. And the world didn't like that. They told her she was too picky, too intense, too much. But she stood her ground. First uncertain, then clear, then unshakable. Because once you've survived your own darkness, you stop fearing your own company. She's learned to nourish herself with quiet, to find warmth in her own presence. She's not distant, she's discerning, she's not guarded. She's grounded, she's not building walls. She's creating sacred space. She opens herself, but only for those who enter with honesty, not flattery, with presence, not performance. Her intuition is no longer a whisper. It's a finely tuned compass. She can sense what lacks depth from miles away. She no longer hesitates to walk away. Her transformation isn't just personal. It's ancestral. It's archetypal. It's the memory that women weren't born to shrink. They were born to overflow, to create, to lead, to live. That memory has awakened something wild within her. A sovereign woman, intuitive, deeply feeling, emotionally free. She may live alone, but she's not lost. She's in alignment with her soul, with her purpose. She's not waiting to be chosen. She chooses. And that reversal unsettles those still trying to control the feminine. But she's beyond reach. She's already crossed over. On the other side, she discovered a truth. Real relationships only begin after we've made peace with ourselves. She doesn't need attention. She radiates presence. She doesn't speak to be heard. Her silence carries weight. She doesn't rush love. She honors timing. Carl Jung taught that what we face within becomes our destiny. And that's why this woman, in choosing herself over and over again, has become the author of a life many don't understand, but secretly admire. She no longer fills voids with fantasies. She no longer begs for a seat at someone else's table. She knows now love should be offered freely. Presence should be invited, not begged for. And when the invitation isn't real, she simply declines, gracefully, without drama, without rage, just with the dignity of someone who knows her worth. Yes, she still wants love, she still longs for connection, but not at the cost of herself. She spent too long folding to fit into spaces too small for her soul. Now she only enters where she can be whole. And that kind of self-honoring takes more than romance. It takes maturity, awareness, courage. She's not seeking fantasy, she's seeking resonance, a soul alliance, where both are free, where neither has to shrink to stay, where growth is mutual, where silence is safe, where dreams are honored, and if that's too much, she's willing to wait, because she refuses to survive on emotional leftovers. To some, that looks like pride, but in truth, it's love. Love in its purest form. This is the rise of a new kind of woman. A woman who's tired of being desired and ready to be deeply respected. She chose to be alone, not because she gave up on love, but because she finally understood. Real love never demands self-denial. And when a woman learns that, her entire world begins to shift. She no longer needs to be loud to be heard. Her energy speaks for her. The space around her changes. Subtly, but undeniably. It's not magic, it's presence. It's lived wisdom. It's the quiet fire of someone who's faced the storm inside and returned, not perfect, but whole. As Jung said, she didn't find wholeness by eliminating the parts she feared. She found it by integrating them all. She doesn't reject love. She simply learned not to sacrifice herself for the kind of connection that demands silence in exchange for closeness, or obedience in return for affection. She still desires love, but the kind of love that allows her to exist fully, without needing to shrink. A love that welcomes both the radiant and the raw, the peaceful and the chaotic, the soft and the fierce parts of who she is. Because she's realized something powerful. Love isn't real if it only embraces the polished version of a person. It isn't complete if it turns away from sadness, from stillness, from the parts that are not always easy to hold. She no longer confuses compromise with self-erasure. She's outgrown connections that thrive on imbalance. She's no longer willing to trade her wholeness for temporary warmth. She's not cold, she's clear. She's not bitter, she's brave. She's not alone, she's aligned. She's learned to walk away from relationships that call her too much and stay close to the stillness that calls her home. Because once you've tasted freedom, you can't unlearn it. And when you've met yourself fully, you can't pretend to be less. She's done explaining her solitude. She's done apologizing for not playing by rules she never agreed to. She's not waiting to be chosen. She's not hoping to be rescued. She is the one doing the choosing now. And that's a quiet kind of revolution. Because the world still doesn't know what to do with women who don't ask for permission. Women who don't mold themselves to fit someone else's comfort. Women who define love not by possession, but by freedom. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's exactly what she's doing. She's becoming. Not someone who performs to be loved, but someone who lives in truth to be at peace. And that peace didn't come easily. It was earned. Through heartbreaks that taught her what she is not. Through silences that revealed what truly matters. Through loneliness that transformed into sacred solitude. She's no longer drawn to shallow waters, she craves the ocean. Not the illusion of connection, but the depth of it. She now values presence over promises, energy over effort, resonance over routine. And that shift has made her dangerous to systems that depend on women doubting their worth. Because when a woman stops needing external validation, she begins to operate from her core. And when she moves from that place of inner knowing, she can't be controlled. She begins to say no to relationships that deplete, to narratives that limit, to roles that silence. And she begins to say yes to herself, to her intuition, to her truth, even when it shakes. And in doing so, she becomes a mirror. A reflection of what's possible when a woman remembers who she was before the world told her who to be. Some might call her intimidating, but what they really mean is unshakable, uncompromising, untamed. Because here's the truth, she doesn't need anyone to complete her. She is already whole, and if love comes, it won't be to fill a void. It will be to overflow. That kind of love doesn't beg to be kept. It doesn't fear solitude, it's grown from it. It doesn't chase validation. It radiates clarity. So if you've ever felt that pull toward stillness, that quiet longing for something real, not louder, not flashier, just real, maybe you're being called too. Called to step back from what numbs you and lean into what heals. Called to meet the version of yourself who no longer settles, who no longer hides, who doesn't need saving, only space to expand. You might be carrying that same spark, that ancient knowing, that quiet whisper that says, you were never too much. You were just in the wrong room. You weren't made to live as a fragment. You were born to be whole. You weren't meant to shrink to fit. You were meant to rise to your full size, with your silence, with your voice, with your truth. And if the love you've been waiting for hasn't arrived yet, maybe it's because you were meant to return to yourself first. Because the most powerful love begins there, not with someone else, but with the sacred decision to stand fully by your own side. And if you've stayed with me this far, if these words touched a part of you you haven't reached in a while, maybe this isn't just a video. Maybe this is a reminder. A reminder of something you once buried beneath expectations, roles, and fear. But now it's rising, not with noise but with clarity. So take a moment. Don't rush past this feeling. Let it settle. Let it guide you. Let it speak. And if it did speak to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this message with someone who needs to remember her strength. Like this video if it resonated. Comment below with what moved you. And subscribe to this channel if you're ready to explore more truths that awaken, soften, and empower. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a message that might find you exactly when you need it most. This isn't just a channel. It's a space for those choosing growth over comfort, truth over pretense, and love that begins from within. Join us, not out of habit, but from the heart. Because sometimes, one voice is all it takes to light up the silence inside someone else, to remind them, you are not too much. You are not alone, you are becoming. And that is more than enough.